Everyone. So, we are again here, but this time we are taking a new chapter for class 10. And this chapter is prescribed in the main textbook for class 10, which is First Flight. And the name of the chapter is A Letter to God. Now, who is the writer of this chapter? Who is the writer of this story? The writer is G.L. Fuentes. So, before we start, the chapter, we should know a few things about the writer, isn't it? So let's just find out who the writer is. Now you can see the picture of G.L. Fuentes. The full name of the writer is Gregorio Lopez y Fuentes, and he was born on 17 November 1895 in Mexico, and he died on 10 December 1966. So G.L. Fuentes was a Mexican novelist, poet, and journalist. He has written many books, including La Seringa de Cristal, which was published in 1914, Claros de Silva, published 1921, El Vagabundo, published 1922, etc. Now, A Letter to God is one of the famous stories written by Fuentes. So, let's move on to the chapter. Now, before I start the chapter, I would like to give you the central idea of the chapter. So, the story is about a farmer. It depicts the unwavering faith of a farmer in God, who believes in God, who has full faith in God. And this story is set in a Latin American country, and the name of the farmer is Lencho, which means that Lencho is the main character. He is the protagonist of the story. So he is expecting a rain shower. He's expecting that rainfall will happen soon and it will nourish his field of corn. So he is a farmer, and what does he do? He has a field full of corn. So he is excited. His excitement is because he feels that once the rain shower starts, it will provide water enough for the corn to flourish. But soon, this excitement turns into disappointment when the raindrops turn into hailstones. Lancho knew that if this happened, it meant that his future was in dark. There was no hope that he could earn any money. So, despite being a farmer, he also was a person who could read and write, and therefore he decided to write a letter to God, explaining his situation and asking for help. So he goes to the town to post his letter, which is addressed to God. The letter, when it is noticed by the postmaster, when the postmaster sees the letter, at first he is surprised, he is amused, he finds it very interesting. But then, realizing what the letter is all about, he gets motivated and he decides that he wants to help the farmer because he sees that a farmer has so much belief in God. Now, finally, by the help of the colleagues and friends of the post office, he is able to collect some money. But it is not enough. The money that Lencho had asked was much more. So, whatever money was collected, it was wrapped in an envelope, and the letter was written in such a way as if it was given by God. So Lencho comes back the next day and he is not at all shocked. He is not at all shocked that God has given him money. Instead, he gets angry. He finds it very strange, and he is not amazed. Instead, he is disappointed and angry because he finds that the amount is less than what he had expected. So this time again he writes a letter to God, conveying his disappointment, telling that he is not happy, and also he mentions that he is not able to trust the employees, the workers of the post office, who he thinks have stolen the remaining amount. So that is the central idea of the story. Now there are a few words which you will find here, uh, which you will come across when you read the story. So let's move on to the story and discuss it in detail. The house, the only one in the entire valley, set on the crest of a low hill. From this height, one could see the river and the field of ripe corn dotted with the flowers that always promised a good harvest. So, the first line states about a house, and it is the only one in the entire valley, in the entire surrounding, and it is set on the crest of a low hill, on the top of a low hill. The hill is not that high, so it is set on it. And from that height, from that place, one could view the river. One could see the river flowing and the field of ripe corn. So there was a field full of ripe corn, which was dotted with the flowers. And because it was a good day, one could feel that this ripe corn would be a good harvest and it would fetch much money. It would fetch a good amount of money for the farmers. The only thing the earth needed was a downpour, or at least a shower. So, the only thing that was remaining to complete this whole picture was a downpour, was a heavy rain, or a drizzle. Throughout the morning, Lencho, so here comes the protagonist, the main character, Lencho. So, the whole morning, Lencho, who knew his fields intimately, who knew his fields very closely, very intimately, had done nothing else but see the sky towards the northeast. So, Lencho was a farmer, and farmers have a way of knowing whether rain will be there or not. So, he was hoping that somehow rain will soon be falling on his field and it would complete everything. So he says, now we are really going to get some water, woman. So probably he is talking to his wife. He is telling his wife that we are going to have rain now because it seems as if rain is about to come. The woman who was preparing supper replied, yes, God willing. So the woman says that if God wishes, then it surely will. The older boys were working in the field while the smaller ones were playing near the house until the woman called to them all. So, probably the farmer Lencho had sons, and his elder sons, his older sons, were working in the field. They were working hard in the field while the young ones, while the younger children, were playing near the house. So, all of them were called together for the supper, for the dinner. It was during the meal that, just as Lencho had predicted, big drops of rain began to fall. So Lencho had made a prediction that rain is about to come, and he was correct. Soon after, rain began to fall down on his huge ripe cornfield. In the northeast, huge mountains of clouds could be seen approaching. So, clouds were forming near the huge mountains and it was approaching, it was coming nearer and nearer. The air was fresh and sweet. The man went out for no other reason than to have the pleasure of feeling the rain on his body. And when he returned, he exclaimed, these aren't raindrops falling from the sky. They are new coins. The big drops are 10-cent pieces and the little ones are 5. So, all of us do love rain, isn't it? So, when rain is about to fall, rain is about to come, we feel certain amount of freshness in the air. We feel a cool breeze and we feel fresh instantly. So, Lencho also feels the same way and he soon goes out to look at the rain, to feel it. And in excitement, in happiness, he exclaims, these raindrops, the raindrops that are falling from the sky, they are not just raindrops, but they are like coins, they are like new coins. Some droplets were big, so he says that the big drops are 10-cent pieces. He compares the drops with rupees, with money, and he says that the big drops are tens in pieces and the little ones are fives. Okay. With a satisfied expression, he regarded the field of ripe corn with its flowers draped in a curtain of rain. So he is very satisfied. His expression shows that he is satisfied, he is happy the rain is falling. And after that, what happens? But suddenly, a strong wind began to blow, and along with the rain, very large hailstones began to fall. Now, what happens? Whatever he was thinking would be a boon for him suddenly turns into a curse, because suddenly a strong wind comes from somewhere, and instead of rain, large hailstones begin to fall. And the falling of hailstones is not good for crops. All of you might know already that falling of crops is not. So after this, he is truly disappointed, and the boys, exposing themselves to the rain, ran out to collect the frozen pearls. So the little boys, they didn't understand much, so they just ran out. They just came out of the house to collect the small hailstones. It's really getting bad now. Now the man is worried. Now Lencho is worried. I hope it passes quickly. So he's hoping that the hailstones will stop quickly so that it doesn't ruin his crops. But it did not pass quickly. For an hour, the hail rained on the house, the garden, the hillside, the cornfield, on the whole valley. The field was white, as if covered with salt. So, against Lencho's wish, however, his whole cornfield, the whole place, was covered with hailstones. It was almost like it was covered with salt. And because of this, everything was destroyed. Whatever he was hoping of the cornfield, that would not be fulfilled, because everything, the cornfield, the crops were destroyed by the hailstones. Not a leaf remained on the trees. The corn was totally destroyed. The flowers were gone from the plants. Lencho's soul was filled with sadness. When the storm had passed, he stood in the middle of the field and said to his sons. So Lencho could not bear all this. He was extremely unhappy, extremely sad. So when the storm had passed, when it was all silent, he went into the field. He stood in the middle of the field and said to his sons, a plague of locusts would have left more than this. Now, locusts are insects which fly in big groups. You might have noticed that grasshopper like insects, they are found mostly, and locusts, what do? They feed on the crops, and that's why Lencho is saying that perhaps a plague of locusts, even if a large number of locusts had come, they would have left something instead of what is happening now. The hail has left nothing. This year we will have no corn and we will have no crops. So that night it was a very sorrowful one. No one was able to sleep, perhaps. And then Lencho is thinking, all our work for nothing. Lencho was a very hardworking farmer, and he is deeply sad, and he starts thinking that we work so much for nothing. There's no one who can help us. We will all go hungry this year. So he is lying on his bed and perhaps thinking all these things. So after this, what happens? What does Lencho do? Now, what is the option left for Lencho? Let's see. But in the hearts of all who lived in that solitary house in the middle of the valley, there was a single hope: help from God. So there was only one option left, there was only one help left, and that was the help from God. Don't be so upset, even though this seems like total loss. Remember, no one dies of hunger. That's what they say, no one dies of hunger. So these two lines uh, show that the people in the house had belief in God. They believe that if there was any trouble, God will help them. God is there to help them and He will not leave anyone hungry. All through the night, Lencho thought only of this one hope, the help of God, whose eyes, as he had been instructed, see everything, even what is deep in one's conscience. So, Lencho was a deep believer, was a strong believer of God, and he believed that God could see everything. He could see even the wrong and the right. He could also look at the inner sense of right and wrong, and therefore he suggested to himself that God will help us. Lencho was an ox of a man. So Lencho was an ox of a man. This particular phrase, ox of a man, it suggests that Lencho was a very hardworking person. He worked like an animal in the fields and still he knew how to write. So it means that not only did he work in the fields, but he also knew how to write. He was also a bit educated. He was able to write. So the following Sunday, he decided that he will go to the post office. So he begins to write a letter which he himself would carry to town and place in the mail. It was nothing less than a letter to God. So he had finally decided that he was going to write a letter to God for help, asking for help, and the following Sunday he would go and place it in the mail himself. So what does he write in the letter? What are the contents of the letter? Let's find out. He wrote, God, if you don't help me, my family and I will go hungry this year. I need 100 pesos in order to sow my field again and to live until the crop comes because the hailstorm. So now we already know what he's writing. He's writing to God that please God, I need 100 pesos. Pesos is the monetary unit of many Latin American countries, several Latin American countries, and therefore he is asking God that please some way provide me with 100 pesos so that I can sow my field again, so that I can again regrow crops in my field as the hailstorm has already destroyed everything. So he wrote to God on the envelope. So the address no one knows, so he simply writes to God and he puts the letter inside and he goes out to the town. At the post office, he placed a stamp on the letter and dropped it into the mailbox. So now he has dropped the letter into the mailbox and he is all ready to see whether he sees a reply or not, whether he gets a reply or not. So now what happens in the post office? One of the employees, who was a postman and also helped at the post office, went to his boss laughing heartily and showed him the letter to God. So people, when they see something uh, strange, something different from the usual daily life, they obviously laugh. Even if we see that someone is actually doing this, even we would laugh probably. So this particular person, this postman, he is having a hearty laugh. He is laughing out and he shows the letter to his boss. So never in his career as a postman had he known that address. So he had never heard of such an address to God. And the postmaster was a fat, amiable fellow. So the postmaster was a very healthy person. He was fat and equally very friendly and pleasant. He was a friendly person. So he broke out laughing as well. He also laughed. But immediately he turned serious and tapping the letter on his desk commented. So as soon as he laughed, he also stopped and he turned serious and he tapped the letter on his desk. And what did he say? What faith! I wish I had the faith of the man who wrote this letter, starting up a correspondence with God. So the postman uh, in the beginning he laughed, but soon he realized that there are very few men who actually have so much faith in God. And he was amazed by this faith that this particular person, who is this person here? It is Lencho. He was amazed by Lencho's faith in God. And he says that I wish I had the faith of this man. I wish I had so much faith as this person. And he is, what is he doing? He is starting up a correspondence. He is trying to connect God. So, in order not to shake the writer's faith in God, the postmaster came up with an idea. So, we sometimes, as human beings, we have a lot of emotions and we believe that nothing bad should happen with good people. So, the postmaster was also, as we already know, was a friendly person. So, as he saw that Lencho had great faith in God, he did not want to break that faith. So, he decided that the letter should be answered. So, what was the idea? That when it would be opened, it was evident to answer it he needed something more than goodwill, ink, and paper. So the postmaster knew that in order to keep that faith in God, there should be something more than just goodwill, ink, and paper. So he decided, he came with a resolution, he came with a decision that he would ask money from his employees and he would also give a part of his salary, and several friends of his were grateful to give something for an act of charity. So everyone was helpful and everyone decided that they will also contribute to such a good act. Now it was impossible for him to gather together 100 pesos, so he was able to send the farmer only a little more than half. He put the money in an envelope addressed to Lencho and with it a letter containing only a single word as a signature, God. So finally the pesos, though it was not 100, he was able to put some money, and so he just put the money. The postmaster put the money and there was only one word that was written. It was God. So now the following Sunday, again Lencho comes back, but this time he is a bit earlier than usual. He comes back to the post office a bit earlier. And what does he do? He asks if there is a letter for him. So the postman himself was there, who handed a letter to him, while the postmaster, experiencing the contentment of a man who has performed a good deed, looked on from his office. So now Lencho has got the letter. He has got the letter where the money has also already been kept. So when Lencho sees it, what is his reaction? Let's see what he reacts like. Lencho showed not the slightest surprise. He was not at all surprised. He was not at all amazed. If you write a letter to God and ask for money and you find money, of course you will be a bit surprised. But here, the reaction of Lencho was quite different. He was not at all surprised. He was not at all saddened or happy or anything. Such was his confidence, means he was so confident that God will send him money. But the reaction that came from him was that he was very angry. Why? Because when he counted the money, he found that there was something wrong. God could not have made a mistake, nor could he have denied Lencho what he had requested. So Lencho felt that there was something wrong, and therefore he was angry. He believed that God could not make any mistake. Immediately Lencho went up to the window to ask for paper and ink. So Lencho again enters the post office and he asks for a paper and ink. On the public writing table, he started to write. So he starts writing there with much wrinkling of his brow, without any showing of any emotion. He starts writing. And what does he write? When he finished, he went to the window to buy a stamp. Again, he buys a stamp and licks and fixes it to the envelope. Now, the moment the letter fell into the mailbox, the postmaster went to open it. So the postmaster, soon after, he goes and finds out what is written in the letter. What was written? What did Lencho write? God, of the money that I asked for, only 70 pesos reach me. Send me the rest, since I need it very much. But don't send it to me through the mail, because the post office employees are a bunch of crooks. Lencho. Now look at the irony of the situation. Can you imagine the look, the expression on the face of the postmaster when he would have read this? He thought that he was doing a great act. He was helping Lencho and that Lencho would be happy. But what was the reaction? It was instead of anger, and not only that, he also accused the people, the employees of the post office, that they were a bunch of crooks, they were thieves, and that they had perhaps taken some of the money, not all the money, but some of the money from the letter, and therefore Lencho was unhappy. So you can imagine that this is an ironic situation. And what is an ironic situation? It is a situation which is strange or amusing, because it is the opposite, it is quite opposite of what is already expected. So it is a story full of strange ironies. Like, you may see one more situation before, when Lencho was expecting raindrops and he was comparing it to coins, and suddenly those raindrops became to hailstones, and whatever he was wishing for had turned into something else. Okay, and again in the ending also the same situation happens. The postmaster expects that Lencho will be happy, but instead Lencho is angry and he accuses all the people of the